Welcome to the All Sorts Podcast, the show that dives deep into the stuff that makes you think, the ideas that shape our lives, and the questions we're all grappling with. And today we're tackling a challenge that I think so many of us can relate to. Seth Godin's The Dip, a little book that teaches you when to quit and when to stick.
Oh, yeah.
It's such a powerful little book with so much to unpack.
Absolutely.
And we've got some great articles alongside the book itself that offer some really interesting perspectives on this whole idea.
Yeah.
You know, we all face those moments, those crossroads where the path ahead gets tough. And we have to decide, do we double down? Do we push through the resistance? Or do we strategically step away? And that's what this deep dive is all about, giving you the tools to make those decisions with more clarity, more confidence, and ultimately more success.
Well, at the end of the day, it's really about resources. We all have a limited amount of time and energy, and where we choose to invest those resources has a huge impact on our outcomes. And Godin really challenges us to think differently about quitting. He argues that it's not always a failure. Sometimes it's the smartest move you can make.
Right, and one of the most fundamental ideas in The Dip is this concept of the outsized rewards that often come with being the best in whatever field you're in.
Yeah, he really hammers that point home.
He does. He talks about how the winner often takes a disproportionate share. Like 10 times the benefit for being number 1 versus number 10.
Yo.
And even 100 times the benefit versus being number 100.
That's wild.
It sounds dramatic, but when you think about it, we see it all the time.
Right. I mean, look at something like search engine results. The top few links get the vast majority of the clicks. It's that winner-take-most dynamic.
It really is, and it's not just about being the absolute best in the entire world. Godin talks about being the best in your world, the best for your specific audience.
Oh, that's so important.
Your target market. So it could be the best freelance graphic designer for a particular type of project, or the best local bakery that specializes in gluten-free pastries.
Exactly. It's niche-specific. Someone looking for a very specific vintage guitar isn't going to care who the biggest guitar manufacturer in the world is. They want to find the best guitar that meets their unique needs.
Right. So it's about defining your world and then striving to be the best within that world. And that's often much more attainable than trying to be the best in some kind of abstract global sense.
Absolutely. And it's often more rewarding, too.
So let's say you've defined your world. You've set your sights on being the best. You start pursuing this new goal. And then you hit that wall.
Oh, yeah.
That inevitable dip.
Tell us about that.
The dip is that point after the initial excitement of starting something new, where progress slows down, things get tough, and you start to question if it's all worth it.
It can be so discouraging.
It really can.
Like you're putting in the effort, but not seeing the results you expected.
And it's so easy to give up at that point. But Godin argues that the dip is actually a strategic advantage.
Okay. How can struggling be an advantage? Because it weeds out the competition. If everyone could easily achieve mastery, then it wouldn't be as valuable. Think about a really tough certification program or a grueling training regimen. The fact that many people drop out along the way makes the achievement even more meaningful for those who stick with it.
Right. It's like a filter.
Exactly.
And the dip is that filter. It separates those who are truly committed from those who are just dabbling.
And Godin gives so many great examples of this. From building a successful startup to becoming a world-class musician. There's always a dip. It's that point where the initial novelty wears off and the real work begins.
And it's not just about enduring the dip. Godin emphasizes that successful people and organizations don't just passively wait for it to end. They lean into it. They look for ways to innovate, to improve, to even redefine the game.
Right. It's about being proactive, not just reactive.
Okay, so we've got the dip, but Godin also talks about 2 other curves, the cul-de-sac and the cliff.
Oh, yeah.
Can you break those down for us?
Sure. So the cul-de-sac is essentially a dead end. It's a situation where you can put in a lot of effort, but you're not going to see any real progress or return on your investment.
Like a job with no room for growth.
Exactly. Or a market that's shrinking and offers no real potential.
Okay, so the key here is to identify those cul-de-sacs early on. And get out of them quickly.
Absolutely. Because the longer you stay stuck in a dead end, the more opportunities you're missing out on.
It's that opportunity cost
Right.
that can really hold you back. What about the cliff?
The cliff is a different kind of beast. It's a situation where things might seem okay for a while, but then you hit the sudden catastrophic failure.
Oh, wow.
Godin uses the example of smoking. You might not see the negative health effects for years, but eventually they catch up with you.
And there's no coming back from that.
It can be pretty devastating.
So how do we distinguish between a dip, a cul-de-sac, and a cliff?
That's the million-dollar question.
Because we need to know when to persevere and when to cut our losses.
Right, and Godin argues that most of the endeavors we undertake will likely follow the pattern of a dip or a cul-de-sac. The cliff is much rarer, but it's important to be aware of.
Okay, so let's dig a little deeper into the dip. Why does it exist? And why does Godin believe it can actually be a good thing?
Well, the primary reason the dip exists is because it creates scarcity. The difficulty acts as a barrier to entry, limiting the number of people who reach the other side.
Okay.
And that scarcity increases the value of the achievement. Think about learning a complex piece of software. If everyone could easily master it, then those skills wouldn't be as valuable in the job market.
Right, because there wouldn't be that scarcity.
Exactly.
It's like that saying, anything worth having is worth fighting for.
Yeah, or the idea of no pain, no gain. Godin uses this great analogy of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. They chose to escape their pursuers by heading into the most treacherous terrain because they knew it would deter most people.
Wow, so the difficulty itself became their advantage.
Exactly.
That's so clever.
He also talks about Jack Welch's strategy at GE, where he would divest any business where they couldn't be number one or two. It wasn't about avoiding challenges. It was about focusing their resources on areas where they were willing to go through the dip to achieve market dominance.
That's fascinating.
He has this great line about how every aspect of business, from customer service to marketing, has its inherent wind problem, the difficult parts that make it hard. But it's those very difficulties that create opportunities for those who can overcome them.
So it's not about trying to avoid the dip. It's about strategically choosing which dips you're willing to go through.
Exactly.
This really challenges the conventional wisdom about diversification, doesn't it?
It definitely does. Well, we're often told to spread our bets, to not put all our eggs in one basket. But Godin argues that in the context of the dip, diversification can actually hold you back.
How so?
He uses the analogy of a woodpecker. If it pecks at a bunch of different trees, it's unlikely to find any food. But if it focuses on one tree and really goes deep, it might just hit the jackpot.
So it's about concentrating your efforts rather than spreading yourself too thin.
Exact.
And that's how you break through the dip and achieve that level of mastery.
And that often requires a certain level of obsession, a real passion for what you're doing.
Okay, so let's talk about why people fail to make it through the dip. Godin identifies 7 key reasons. Can you walk us through those?
Sure. So number 1 is running out of resources, time or money. Number 2 is getting scared. The dip can be intimidating, and it's easy to let fear paralyze you. Number 3 is not being serious. If you're not truly committed to begin with, you're much more likely to give up when things get tough. Number 4 is losing interest. Sometimes the passion just fades, and it's hard to keep pushing when you're no longer excited about the goal. Number 5 is focusing on the short term. It's easy to get caught up in the immediate discomfort of the dip and lose sight of the long-term benefits. Number 6 is quitting right before the miracle happens.
Oh, wow.
Right before the breakthrough. You've put in all this work, you're just about to see the results, and you give up. And number 7 is picking the wrong thing. You might just not have the aptitude or passion for it, and that's okay.
It's so important to recognize that.
It really is.
And the interesting thing is that Godin points out how many systems are actually designed around the expectation that people will quit.
Oh, yeah, that's a fascinating point.
Like gyms that oversell memberships.
Yeah.
Knowing that most people won't actually use them consistently.
Or subscription services that rely on inactive users. They're counting on people quitting.
It's kind of cynical, but it's true.
It is.
And it underscores the advantage for those who persevere. Godin uses the analogy of the Wizard of Oz,
where seemingly impossible tasks were set to identify those who were truly determined.
It's like a test of commitment.
Exactly.
Now, Godin also talks about different types of dips. Can you give us some examples of those?
Yeah, there's the manufacturing dip, which often occurs when you're scaling production and you start running into new complexities and quality control issues.
Okay.
There's the sales dip, which many businesses experience when they move beyond those initial early adopters and try to build a more sustainable customer base. And there's the education dip, That frustrating plateau you hit when you're learning a new skill and it feels like you're not making any progress.
So recognizing which type of dip you're in can help you tailor your strategies and overcome the specific challenges you're facing.
Absolutely.
This brings us to another crucial distinction: strategic quitting versus reactive quitting.
Yes, that's so important.
Can you explain the difference?
Strategic quitting is a well-thought-out decision based on data, a clear understanding of your goals, and a realistic assessment of whether you can actually overcome the dip, or if you're in a cul-de-sac. It's about making a conscious choice to redirect your resources to more promising opportunities. Reactive quitting, on the other hand, is driven by emotion, frustration, fear, or a lack of immediate results.
It's impulsive.
It is.
And often not in your best interest. Godin really emphasizes that strategic quitting is a sign of strength. It allows for greater overall success, while reactive quitting
Can lead to a pattern of giving up prematurely on things that might actually be worth pursuing.
So how do we know if we're making a strategic decision to quit or just reacting to the discomfort of the dip?
Godin gives us 3 questions to ask ourselves.
Okay, what are they?
Number 1, am I panicking? Don't make big decisions when you're in a heightened emotional state. Wait until you're calm and can think clearly. Number 2, who am I trying to influence? If you're trying to change the mind of one person, your strategy will be different than if you're trying to reach a mass market.
That makes sense. And number 3, what sort of measurable progress am I making, even in a tough dip?
You should ideally see some signs of forward movement. If you're consistently stagnant, it might time to reevaluate.
These are really helpful questions to consider.
They really are.
And Godin makes another powerful point, that when you're in the right dip, the opposite of quitting isn't just passive endurance, it's rededication.
Oh, I like that.
It's about actively recommitting with renewed energy and a fresh perspective. He shares a story about a guy named David,
who was ready to quit his job, but instead decided to go for broke and propose a new role for himself. And he ended up getting a big promotion.
Wow. So sometimes being willing to walk away is actually the key to creating a better path forward.
Sometimes you have to shake things up.
And finally, Godin emphasizes that quitting in the dip is often a short-term decision, driven by that immediate pain, without considering the long-term consequences.
Yeah, we're so focused on avoiding discomfort that we sometimes miss out on big opportunities. Godin talks about people who abandon their fitness routines because they're sore, or students who drop challenging classes, even though those subjects are important for their future goals.
It's about playing the long game, visualizing the rewards on the other side of the dip, and staying focused on the bigger picture.
He even suggests keeping score, tracking your progress to stay motivated.
That's a great idea.
It can really help you push through those tough times.
So the key takeaway here is to develop that discernment, to know when you're facing a dip that's worth pushing through, and when you're in a cul-de-sac, where strategic quitting is the smarter move. It's about making informed long-term decisions, rather than reacting to short-term frustrations.
Well said.
As you think about your own endeavors, ask yourself, what dip am I currently navigating? And how can I approach it with a new perspective? Either by leaning in with greater focus, or by strategically considering if it's truly the right dip for me.
Those are powerful questions.
If this deep dive into Seth Godin's The Dip has sparked new insights for you, we invite you to continue your journey of discovery. With the All Sorts podcast, we have a whole library of deep dives into all sorts of fascinating topics just waiting for you to explore. Hit that like button, share this episode with your friends, and subscribe to our channel right here on YouTube so you never miss a new episode. And to stay connected with our community and get all the latest updates, be sure to follow the All Sorts podcast on X, Instagram, and Threads. We're all navigating this landscape of knowledge together, and we appreciate you being a part of our exploration.